Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Street Epistemology review show. I'm Reid from Cordial Curiosity, and I've got a bunch of people here with me. I've got Mark, Janosch, Will, and Dali. What's up, y'all?
Hey, good to see you.
What's up? Yeah.
What's up? I think we all know each other. Even about a month ago, or a few weeks ago, I met up in London with Janosch and Will. That was a lot of fun. We met up with them, and I was doing some video shoots for Peter Boghossian's channel. Peter was there. That was a lot of fun. But that was in London. The video today, we're going to be reviewing a video where Peter and I were in Sydney, Australia, about 2 months ago at this point. At this point, this video's got, I think, over 150,000 views. It's been getting a lot of traction, and it's the new spectrum street epistemology style, which we kind of started practicing last summer during Peter Boghossian's reverse Q&A tour. We're not sure if that's even a good thing to do. We can talk about that. Is that even SE? There's a lot of questions around this at all. So I'm sure we'll get all into that. Anything else to say before we start?
I was going to ask, what do you think Peter's goals are for having these conversations?
His goals are to expose a certain ideology he finds pernicious and harmful in society, and also modeling ways of having conversation and certain critical thinking tools people can emulate potentially in their own lives.
You hit me up with this idea of using street epistemology to expose, and I was initially resistant to that, and I have come around. You have changed my mind.
Yeah, I think it fits in with my first goals I had for my channel, exposing the maybe not corruption of Christianity, but the ideological bankruptcy of certain beliefs and ways of reasoning about theological issues, religious beliefs, pseudoscience. Yeah. I may not have had that explicit goal, but we are exposing certain ways of thinking, and that has implications with, I don't know, just the status of those kinds of ideologies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of.
What do you think about what you said in the beginning, that using SE to discuss a specific ideology or specific? I mean,
isn't that forcing the claim, basically choosing the claim for them? Yeah.
Yeah. If you're bringing a claim to them, that is an activist goal. Yeah. And as long as you're sticking with street epistemology as like where they don't know your position, you're trying to be neutral, you're trying to help them reflect on the quality of their reasoning, even if you have an opinion about it, you're very biased about it. If they can't tell, or if they think you're the opposite bias of what you are, that would be a success. But sometimes we fail at that and we reveal our bias, and it's obvious and it is manipulative potentially.
Yeah.
So we want to stay away from that, ideally.
I summarize my goal in this exposure regard as exposing fallacious thinking. Exposing fallacious epistemologies, because I think when somebody recognizes a fallacy, they stick it in a new bucket, and they are now immune when they see that reasoning used. They are now immune to taking on the conclusion that reasoning leads to.
I think I would like to draw a line between exposing, as in exposing to the audience, and exposing to the person themselves. And when in that regard, I think I prefer the phrasing helping them discover inconsistencies or fallacious epistemology, fallacious thinking, because that is, I feel, pretty much at the core of what street epistemology is about, that you do not expose something that will create shame for the person, but they will actually, you will help them discover it, and they will be curious about it and want to think more about it.
Yeah, and I think if we want people to change their beliefs in cases where they need to change their beliefs, I think we could agree that if there's element of shame in the conversation, that works. It's just completely probably the opposite of what we want to do.
I really like Janosch's words on that. Relates the IL, and for clarity, I think exposure is still the right verb for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the characteristics here is the audience is a player in this dynamic, and that's not always the case with SE. And it's interesting to see how the presence of the audience or an awareness of the audience is. Ideally, it should not modify the principles of SE, nor should you having a specific perspective on the conversation. And I think we could judge the success of the SE based on whether or not we feel that bias is modifying the questions or making you reluctant to challenge maybe poor reasoning when it's in favor of the position that you hold. Because we're just as susceptible to that as the questioner as we are the conversation partner. So I think if we want to make sure that if nobody could tell that you held a view on this or that you had a perspective, then I think that would be good SE, in my view.
Great. All right, want to get into it?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Feel free to pause or let me know. Here we go.
They're saying you have to affirm somebody else's belief system. If you look at them and they're a man and they've got a penis, and they tell you they're a woman, or they tell you that they're a labradoodle or something like that, why should you believe it?
To laugh.
I didn't mean to laugh.
That was a funny thing to say.
I don't have a problem with it. They can believe that they're a labradoodle, a female one, or a bisexual labradoodle. But why should I have to accept that?
I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 move, and it's very important that everybody move at the same time. We should no longer use the word gender. Don't go up. We should no longer use the word gender. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Can I say what you shared with us before? Mm-hmm. So you shared with us that you're trans, is that right?
That's correct.
And what does that mean, first of all?
There's a slightly weird timing there where he asked for permission and then said it, and then she said he could say it. there was just a slight order of events problem there, but okay.
Yeah.
And maybe we should just back up and discuss the distinction between a normative claim and a factual claim. And this is a should claim, just so which something to keep in mind as the thing.
We should normative. It's a societal norm we want to question.
Right.
And just as an aside, this blonde woman, there's a lot of comments in the original video of like, why didn't you talk to this blonde woman? If you're talking about women versus trans women, they should have a voice in the discussion. Well, we did talk with this person, but their responses were fairly incoherent. She seemed to be not mentally ill there. So we cut all that out. It just, it was not worth even leaving it in the video. So that's why. Anyway.
Say what you shared with us before. Mm-hmm. So you shared with us that you're trans, is that right?
That's correct.
And what does that mean, first of all?
It means I have a gender identity that is not reflective of biological sex.
And I don't mean to be daft. I'm trying to explain because people are going to try to figure that out. What does that mean?
It means that a word like gender helps explain nuances in the world of men and women, boys and girls.
So what is when you hear the word gender, what does that mean? What is that, like, how would you define that?
That's usually, in my view, that's usually a reference to gender identity. So, for lack of a better phrase, a sense of what one perceives is biological sex, but we're not calling it biological sex.
So if a person is born with a penis, they can have a gender that's female? Is that accurate?
Something like that, yes.
What could I say that would have been more articulate, that have described that better?
I think it's one of those topics that being articulate for anyone, even myself, can be difficult because everyone's everyone has different experiences in how they perceive gender/sex, and it's a very personal experience. And because it's a very personal experience, people will think that people have perceptions of others' perceptions, which to get everyone on the same page can be particularly difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's. I'm gonna.
So that opening question was pretty loaded, but I did like the way he opened it back up and invited her to recharacterize. How could I have asked that more in a way that was more articulate? I thought it was good that he did that. He didn't let his characterization stand. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good example. Like when you mirror what someone said and you try to summarize in your own words, and you ask, "Is that what you're saying?" and they give you the answer, "Yes, exactly," then you're fine. If they say, "Oh, that's even better than I could have put it," great. If they say, "Yeah, something like that," I think that was a great example of what you should ask in response. Like, okay, how could I have said that better?
Yeah, there was an unfortunate moment before then where he said, and I don't think he was trying to be uncharitable, but he said people are going to have to try and figure that out, and that automatically characterized that statement as just something that other people just aren't going to understand, and it's kind of out there in some weird way. What might have been better is how could you help people who aren't familiar with that idea understand it? That could have been a better way of framing it. It's funny how these little things, they sound like we're really nitpicky, and I could appreciate that might sound like a nitpicky thing, but these things like build up tension in the conversation if you're not careful. And you really want to avoid like building up that tension in the conversation by making sure people see you as a, honest actor and making it as open as possible. So yeah, these little things matter, I think.
Yeah, and it's also good to define all these words before you even do the lines where they go to a certain degree of agreement. This should all be cleared up before that happens. So yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Anyway, so now we'll go to the next person.
Go back all the way over here. Now,
yeah, we were next to a fountain. It was a little loud. So, and I've also modified this where, and now we're doing where I'm doing like you saw it, Dali, where the lines are curved and people are facing each other if they're on the opposite lines. So it's much more closer and much more.
That is better. Yeah,
I really do like the modified perspective version better for the camera. Thank you.
Yeah, and it mimics my, half a circle confidence scale. Anyway,
hey, you gotta Connie. You can come over here. So we should no longer use the word gender, and you're on the strongly agree, and you're playing the game right. One foot to each side of the line. So thank you. So tell us why you think that.
Well,
tell them
why.
Well, so they can hear you.
All right. Okay. So the idea.
I've told Peter this multiple times. I don't think people should be addressing each other. They should be addressing Peter, and Peter should be able to relay a charitable, clarified, succinct version of whatever they're saying to other people, so they're not so it makes it less likely to turn into a debate, and they're starting to debate. Yeah.
So he should steel man the position and then relay that. Is that what you're saying? Or okay.
Yeah. He should ask it back to the interviewer so that it can be translated. If ever I've had a problem with losing control of a spectrum, it's when they start addressing each other and they turn it into a debate. I have to like grab a hold of one of them and say, "Hold on, for our format," and then I have to do some teaching thing, and that's much more disruptive than if I had just pointed them at me to begin with.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think this is like partly why the new version of the Spectrum format I think is a lot better, because obviously he's now sort of called the lady over to join them, so she's now wandering off the line, but he's being very prescriptive about how he needs to stand. So he's standing with his feet either side of the line, and then he says, "No, tell them." So now he has to turn around. So Peter is sort of marionetting the situation, but none of these rules are relevant. None of these things are actually aiding the conversation or helping anybody understand anything. So it's sort of it's theatre that's not helping. But yes, I understand. Yeah. But we definitely improved it, I think.
Yeah, I think Peter's intent is just to build rapport and just talk a little bit,
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway,
The idea is this. I mean, science is already in the state of being destroyed, right? It's being, we're arguing about climate change or not climate change. Nothing is resolved. In the old days, science meant knowledge. It didn't mean ambiguity. It didn't mean argument without resolution. We resolved everything, right? So what we have is a human being, as you...
Wait a minute. Right there is a big conversation to have potentially about the nature of knowledge. Does it relate to being permanent? Like, something, we know something and now we've known it forever and into the future. We can't, it's like
he's
a permanent
describing
thing.
science exactly backwards.
Yeah. Does anyone ever have the final say?
He's saying science knows, and now it's ambiguous. No, you misunderstand science.
Science is a process. Yeah.
This is a problem for two reasons. One is the topic is fixed, and secondly, you've got multiple people playing this game now. He's just said something that in any other direct one-on-one conversation, we would have been, forget everything else. Let's talk about science is being destroyed. Let's have that conversation. Let's home in on that one thing and focus our attention on it. But now that's just a bullet point in what is going to be, no doubt, a increasingly strange, perhaps, dialogue about the nature of science and that being a justification. And Peter can't chase that down because he's got to maintain the narrative between multiple participants. One of the many reasons why I don't think multi-person SE is effective.
Yeah, also, I'm there behind the camera with a whiteboard and this GoPro's on the end of it. And I'm writing down currently different claims that I'm hearing. And I'm going to have different claims on these little magnets that I'm putting on the end. I don't think I had it for this one. No, I didn't. But now I've modified it where I leave the first claim we're talking about and like a potential question or something else to talk about on another portion of the board.
Right.
So, and we're also now trying to like reset the game to different claims or subclaims or reasons more often. That makes it more interesting,
But this gentleman's claim that science is being destroyed is such a fascinating thing. But the lady that's also in the game currently may not have any real relationship to that claim. And so resetting the board around that claim would seem unfair because maybe some participants might be like, I don't even know why he would say that. It creates this awkward dynamic. Yeah.
It does give me insight into his epistemology.
Yeah, good point.
Sure.
What he values, what he thinks is important, and how he chooses his validators and things of that order. So it's useful information, even if I don't bite the red meat, as Anthony would say.
Yeah, to add some more context, both him and the trans woman are Catholics, I believe, and they were both protesting against another protest. There's a huge march protest for it was for the making abortion illegal because they're Catholics, and they were in that protest together for I guess a few hours before that. So that's more context.
That explains the shirt. I think
That's interesting. Okay.
The shirt says I am for life or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see more of that.
Mentioned before, he's born with a penis or she's born with a vagina.
Correct.
That is material evidence.
Material evidence for
Hang on,
what?
what did Peter
that
just
person
strong
exists.
Wait. What did Peter just strong correct there? Because now Peter's now judging his statements and issuing a ruling. What was that statement exactly?
What was it again?
Material evidence for what?
The fact that that person exists.
True.
And the person has an identity. He was born with a certain mother and a father. He was born in a religion. He was born in a culture. He's got a language. He's got a station in life. So that's their whole identity.
Okay.
Well, and that's science because it's logical fact. It's material fact.
People change their religion. There's a word for it, apostasy.
Well, they could go against the religion and they could be apostate. They could be anti-theist. I don't accept the word atheist.
Right, correct, right.
Atheist is completely bullshit. It's just like gender.
What is Peter saying is correct in any of the things that are being said right now? Firstly, it's really bad to judge the statements because that's not what you're here to do.
Yeah.
This went off the rails quick.
And he starts off correct, and then it goes
correct,
okay, and then Okay, so I mean that's like messaging, pure messaging, right there.
Yeah.
And it's,
Because of the author of A Manual for Creating Atheists has just agreed that atheism is I don't know, not a thing. That's quite.
No, he agreed that
I know that's
having
not
a
what happened, but
penis or a vagina is material evidence of existing. That's for
Right.
sure.
but it's kind of, it sounded like that.
it was, yeah, that was not carefully navigated.
Yeah.
There's
Okay,
also-
so I'm missing you. So connect for me so I can understand climate change to gender. I'm not making that link.
Well, climate change is currently being argued for 70 years without resolution. That's not science. Science will give you a resolution, like the laws of physics. Like something is male or something is female. It's absolutely self-evident. It's not something you can argue about. If you argue against reality, it means you're insane.
Okay, what if somebody, and I'm not saying this is your position, I'm doing the best that I can given the difficult topic. What if somebody is born with a penis and they say, you know what, I feel like I'm born in the body of someone who has a vagina?
So they need help because they're obviously mentally ill.
Okay, so there are, we
should
can
treat
acknowledge
them.
that there are people
That
who
was
are
wrong. It
like
was
this,
just a
who
wrong-
feel like
wrong
this.
framing.
They're not normal.
Do what?
It was just a
type-
wrong framing. His thought experiment was backwards, or I don't even know. It didn't make sense actually. He said you were born with a penis, but you feel like you're born with the body of a vagina. Like
Right.
that's not. I've
Yeah.
noticed this with Peter before. He needs to be more careful when he tries to steel man a position he doesn't agree with. I think he wasn't very careful with it there, and it's not a good sign that he's not able to express this position. Yeah.
And I felt the same thing when I listened to this. And later on, I think I kind of understood what he meant. I think he meant like he feels the same as if he was a person who was born with a vagina. Like he experiences life in the same way as a person who was born with a vagina. I think that's what he's
Yeah.
what he
Instead of
means.
using woman,
Right.
he defined woman to make it less ambiguous, potentially.
Yeah.
If I listen to him with charity, I have no trouble at all. But his IL is not going to be listening that way. So I'm with William. Peter should have said it
Yeah,
better.
absolutely.
Okay.
But also, he's going out there to have these conversations, right? So having these, I mean, that wasn't even a left of field. This is a standard representation of what somebody might express as their trans experience, right? So he should be able to articulate that, and it would be beneficial to, I guess, practice or rehearse it. And we've talked about having. We've talked about in SE practice maybe having little like chess puzzle versions of SE where somebody could make a claim or a statement, and you could try to work out what you might do in response to those statements. This was part of Dali's stickman experiments, and I think rehearsing steel manning positions is another characteristic of this that you can practice and get better at, and is probably going to return some value, some response to that investment. I think it's yeah, good.
I think what would have been even better would have been to ask the trans person, how do you define trans? How does that, can you describe that experience? And then ask this guy if that was a definition that they could agree on. Find a definition that they can agree on instead of giving them your own definition.
Might have been an interesting experience. I would be cautious of having the dialogue between the two people and not through the street epistemologists, because at that way you're just moderating a debate between two strangers, and that I mean that could be a thing you could do, but I'm not sure that would be SE.
To Janosch's point, I think if you have two different people and we're working off two different definitions, we can go an hour or 3 hours down this conversation, and then we're still not talking about the same thing.
Very
It's
true.
enough wrestling to get a group of people to address the same claim
Yeah.
in at least the same terms. To get them to agree upon definitions is very debate-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we can then remove the word, like make the word taboo and just use a definition someone gives and focus on that claim.
A third person's definition. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Normal people, they're mentally ill people. If you say I don't have a nose, look at me, I don't have a nose. I mean, it's going to be pretty idiotic, right? How are you going to deal with me like a sane person and work with me with a job and, you know, eat
If you're
dinner?
running around saying you don't have a nose.
Right. How about if I say I'm a fence post? I identify as a fence post.
Okay.
I'm straight up and down and I'm 6 feet tall. I'm a fence post. And don't you dare call me anything else except fence post.
So
Okay.
maybe we should stop
What
right
do you-
there. In that, you know, I'm just putting myself in the other IL's shoes and hearing this from the other side, and I'm just thinking like, oh, this is not going to be a pleasant conversation, is it? This is something that I'm going to have to, you know, get defensive, and this is something where I'm going to maybe get attacked. I mean, just when you're talking about somebody, you know, and that's not Pete's fault. This is that IL. So the question is, how would we address that to get the conversation back on track, where we're all have maybe the same or similar goals in mind to understand each other, because I think this is leading to more not understanding than understanding.
Peter's also affirmed, like either through just conversational, just trying to get the conversation flow and build rapport, maintain rapport, but he sounds like he's very much affirming the position of the gentleman that we're just speaking to. He was sort of okay and yes and correct and things. It was all positive reinforcement to the narrative that the gentleman was speaking to. And no part of this, as of yet, has been a challenge to, or even an understanding of what the underlying epistemological reasoning was, other than science is being destroyed. Peter's not offered any challenge to the reasons that are supporting these claims, and the gentleman's now made lots of different claims, so it's kind of maybe even difficult to clarify which rabbit to chase there. But yeah, at the moment nothing's been unchallenged, so it just looks like Peter's sort of agreeing with this gentleman in a way that maybe isn't helpful.
Well, I think I'm just saying that people, you know, I think the person, the other IL says, well, I'm not a fence post, I'm not this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's not. I'm just trying to think of how we could carry the conversation forward, and if our goal is an SE goal, and for understanding and for having people reflect on their beliefs, I'm thinking we would probably need to dial, you know, have the moderator maybe dial that back a bit, like, hey, we're not saying you're a French post, you know, I don't know. That's probably the difficulty with Spectrum SE. I'm not sure.
In this case, the question that occurs to me is, could you, to find the limits, could you find exceptions where somebody is more or less insane in this regard? Or are you defining insanity as the belief of something that doesn't fit with your understanding of the facts? Those kinds of...
Yeah, I'd like to know his definition of mentally ill.
Down. And I can do that neutrally without too much challenge on the rapport side.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to mention is that the other people watching those two interact, and then Peter laughing at this guy's jokes.
Yeah, that
could also, like, they are connecting there,
yeah.
and it's like this guy is saying things that, like, I don't have a nose, and is comparing that to someone saying I'm transgender.
I'm just trying to stand from the IL's perspective that way.
That can also feel very disrespectful, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredibly difficult to navigate that when you have several conversation partners. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so hard that I wonder if it's a format that I would want to continue doing.
I love it. I find it easier than table.
Okay.
And it makes for, I mean, it's over 150,000 views, which what's the last SE video one-on-one we've seen that got over more than however many. And if we want to, it's a trade-off. There's a risk of showing unproductive conversation, but if we're good enough SE moderators, we're showing people in conflict, and SE is for addressing conversational conflict between people potentially.
I'm not sure how much we could attribute the increase in viewership to the Spectrum SE mechanism. how, or whether or not this is just a particularly hot button and contentious topic in this moment. And Peter's, he had a few contentious topics recently, and so there's probably a lot of people currently following. I mean, as in, I don't know how much. I legitimately couldn't tell you how much we should attribute the success of this video to the format.
We cover this topic in tabletop constantly. It's a very common topic, and I would think that if the topic were the issue, we would see it in viewership. Now, I have had some trans and gay related videos that have performed unusually well, about twice as good on my channel as prior, but we're talking an order of magnitude, not a slight bump.
I didn't understand Reid's point to be it is getting this number of viewers because people are so interested in the method necessarily, but if people are exposed to it, if people are entertained by it because it works this way, they will be exposed to this form of SE, and that way they will learn at least that there is some form of some conversational technique out there that they could use that helps you have more productive conversations.
It's a deliberate strategy to use conflict to drive attention. To drive attention to what? SE. So I think it's worth it. And productive conversations happen, and as you'll see at the end of this video, but also sometimes it goes to a shit show, which is also more attention. So there's a trade-off.
I see SE is not conflict. I mean, by definition, to me, the street epistemological conversation should be devoid of that kind of conflict. No?
The purpose of SE is to mitigate conflict.
Yeah, the perfect example. But we need to show the bad examples as well. So we see how to hack through a jungle and how to recover from slips and all those things. Bad examples are as valuable to me as good examples.
Well,
especially if you call them out.
I feel we have lots of bad examples out there in the world. And I feel that we need the good examples. We need the good conversations. We need the very non-confrontational SE conversations to show that, I mean, that was what drew me in, what fascinated me about SE when I started watching.
I would like to see Pete do a one-on-one conversation, SE conversation with a trans individual instead of the spectrum.
Yeah, right. That would be fascinating. I would love to.
I can help make that happen.
Cool.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
Think of what he has to say.
Yeah.
Tell him so he can hear.
Sure. There is a bodily reality, bodily material, a physical reality. That's not to say, it's not to say that it's wrong or should be ignored.
What do you have to say about the claim that he is acknowledging, correct me if I'm wrong, that some people legitimately do say, I was born with a penis, but I feel I was born in the wrong body. No, but I'm saying people feel like that. Okay. What do you have to say about the claim that is a mental disorder?
It's one way of describing it. Probably what's more important is how do we best deal with it?
That's a good answer. But I don't understand why this is just an interview at this point. Like, what does he need to hear? Like, how do you respond to this talking point? Like, how are we exploring the epistemology of these positions?
It's a debate. And so far, it's a debate.
It's a debate. Pete's moderating a debate. Yeah.
An epistemological conversation yet.
Yeah, we don't want to ask, like, how would you respond to? It should be. How is that even relevant to a reason? Well, you could fit that into an argument he's trying to say that we shouldn't take mental illnesses seriously. I think that's what he's trying to say, right?
I mean, the premise of yeah, but like the premise is what we're doing currently is somebody's making a statement, and it's like, well, what do you feel about that? You know, this is Jerry Springer. This isn't street epistemology. It's normally in SE, somebody makes a claim and we explore what the reasons that they think that claim is true and how do their reasons correlate to their confidence. None of this is happening. It's Jerry Springer. I mean, which is fine because people like Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer is very popular. Maybe Pete wants to be, hosting a Jerry Springer show. I mean, that I think could work actually. It would be quite fun. But I'm not sure when the SE comes into play here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Okay, how do we deal with it? Do we have those individuals get psychological help? Do we say, yes, you are in that body and we need to help you physically transition to be in that body? Do we ignore them? I mean, what ought society's response to that to be?
So, in an earlier life of mine, there were attempts to, let's say, convince me that I shouldn't transition genders, that the way I'm thinking, I shouldn't think like that, but it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for me. But what has worked for me is medically transitioning.
And what do you mean by worked? You mean you feel better now?
Correct. I've never been able to be convinced that I should continue living life as my biological sex.
So again, this is a normative claim that's being offered here, that this person says that they should be able to do X. And the other person is, I'm thinking, is countering with they should not. Is that correct?
Yeah, we started with the claim we should no longer use the word gender, but now Peter talked with this person and asked about how do we deal with people who feel this way? What is the strategy? What is the not the should, it's the strategy of how do we get to the should, to another should of we should help people feel better. How do we do that? Now that's a different claim though. We could have reset
different
to.
claim now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did like that Pete asked what do you mean by it worked? And then he immediately followed it up, unfortunately, with you're feeling better now. It would have been better to just wait and have them. But I mean, they agreed, so I guess it was close to what they were going to say. But still, I think it was a good question.
I think it was a good question. I think it could have been asked a lot better. I think, what do you mean by worked is a bit challenging, and I would suggest, could you tell me in what ways it worked for you? Much more inviting, but that might just be my own style.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Have we
What do you
addressed
think
Reid's
about-
hat yet? Have
What's
we
that?
spoken about Reid's hat? Have we addressed Reid's hat in this video?
No,
Have we spoken about this? Because
that's
okay,
we'll
well,
talk about that.
let's get the SE out the way, and then we can give the last half of the show to the hat conversation.
I'm just blending in with the natives here in Australia.
Sun
Protect
protection's
hats.
always good. All right.
Yeah, I had gotten a really bad sunburn,
Yeah.
and then I went to the zoo, and they had big hats, so I got a hat. And
Give me your biggest hat.
Like your largest hat, please, stout yeoman.
Yep.
That.
Well,
Tell them.
the problem is that they won't accept that they're mentally ill, right? The idea is if you're born with a penis and you don't identify as male, there's something wrong, right? So
Right,
the
so
proper
we're
term-
all agreeing there's something wrong. The question is, what should be
We
done
are?
about it?
Well, the thing to be done
are we
about
agreeing? What are we agreeing?
Apparently, we all agree that there's something wrong,
That is true.
or they're mentally ill.
The trans person said it is one way to describe it being a mental illness. So that is something wrong with you potentially. So now we're talking about the strategy to deal with mental illnesses.
Yeah, we need to define mental illness. I mean, we have to sort of really understand what we're talking about here.
Welcome, Nathan. What's up?
Whoa.
Feel free to pop in with any commentary.
when we're working with people who are mentally ill is to have compassion on them and to treat them, not to accept what they say. Because when you accept what you say, you're validating their insanity.
Okay.
You're not helping the person.
Okay, so correct me if I don't want to put words into your mouth. So please don't let me do that. So
What I have the proper name. The proper name is not, they call it gender dysphoria because I'm saying gender is bullshit. You can't have the gender dysphoria. Science is about knowledge. Knowledge is permanent, okay? the person we are talking about has a penis, and that's a permanent truth. So the idea is that basically we shouldn't be believing what they say. We should take absolute biological truth, because
Okay.
that's what it is.
All right.
We're not going to
So the
challenge knowledge is permanent. We're not going to mention that. We're not going to address that. We're not going to just put a little pebble in that shoe. We're not going to give any counter example of why that might not be the case.
Yeah,
We're just
nobody
gonna
has
put
the
it that
last
way.
say. You know, we're building on information that we know. I mean, that could be asked about for sure.
He definitely seems to be of the opinion that knowledge, science is authoritative in this permanent and unchanging way. And I think that really is a position that should be being challenged right now, because it seems to be holding up a lot of his, I guess, perspectives here.
But again, it's hard to do that with spectrumacy because you have the other people who may not even have an opinion on that or not interested in talking about that.
I don't think it would be difficult at all for me in this situation to go right down to his epistemology and ask him challenging questions about the permanency of science and science's perspective on fallibility or changeability, that kind of thing, and perhaps have him restate his epistemology as relates to science. I think I could ask those questions directly.
Sure.
Why do we think people? I know. I'm just curious. Like, what do we think? I mean, because we mentioned at the outset that if you're coming with a perspective, then maybe you're not going to notice or ask challenging questions, or maybe is this bias on Pete's part? Is he just trying to juggle too many balls? Is he just in a different? Does he want the conversation to be in a different place, and so he's not addressing? He doesn't want to spend time on that in that space. What is Peter's motivation, do you think, for not wanting to challenge that claim that science is immutable, which has been made now twice, by the way? Like he's mentioned it twice,
and that seems to be the primary reason for his belief. So that's why we would be talking about that. Just to clarify.
What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you think that Pete, because I've not seen everything from the start of this video, is Pete behaving the same way towards this person as he did toward the person he probably sort of disagreed with the views of more so? So what I mean by that is, for example, the way that he's saying, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth and stuff like that. I think I heard him say some of those things to the other person, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that's like something that's consistent. But maybe he stops and sort of picks the other person up on something earlier, or was there anything like that, or is he fairly consistent across the board here?
It feels like the lady's trying to explain her perspective still. She's still in that position where she's trying to articulate her perspective and her views, where the gentleman is not only representing his views, but also trying to explain his justifications. And so it's because of that I think I'd not heard her say anything that is underlying her views other than her own subjective experience. Whereas with the gentleman, he's claiming this very clear indication of science being immutable. And
oh sure, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean from like what do they actually disagree about point of view. I meant in terms of like Pete as an SE host or whatever, right? Do you think he's like consistently questioning both sides here? Because I didn't see like the first half to compare as much.
I sense a bias that I consider about 2 notches down on her side versus his side in terms of acceptance and agreement, and just I can see Peter's bias, but I'm also very aware of Peter's bias from prior things. So this is my bias perhaps showing through.
And how do you think that comes out? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go ahead, Mark?
Oh, no, go ahead, Nathan.
Well, I was just wondering how people see that as coming out. So in terms of for everyone, including ourselves, presumably to sort of avoid, right, if we want to do conversations slightly differently, how do those things come? Yeah, is it like laughing at people?
Laughing.
Yeah, I think I think that both conversations are in different frames, so it's not easy to compare whether Peter is being equal in his approach. I guess that's kind of, I think what I was trying to say is like, because the register, I guess, of where they are both at is not normalized. Like, he's in a different place, so I'd expect Peter to be pushing back more on what the gentleman's saying, and I think the lady's trying to still explore her position. He's also using the gentleman's position as a proxy for his own, as a way of challenging her position, but not necessarily doing that same way. Doesn't seem as frequent in any case. He also seems to be spending more time with the gentleman, who is certainly a little bit more eager to speak. So that could be a component of that. But that also is starting to feel a little bit imbalanced in the narrative. But you know, if these were one-on-one conversations, none of these comparisons would exist, and therefore you'd feel like there was just a more meaningful ebb and flow of a real human-to-human conversation. But now that there is a spectrum, there are multiple people on that, you've got these comparisons, and so you're inviting this problem.
Yeah.
Question, Reid. Were the timings edited on either of the two end people? Or did
No, we didn't cut out anything they said. No.
Okay, so we're getting to see the whole. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's not like extremely apparent that Peter is strongly disagreeing with anyone. I don't think he's like very strongly conveying messaging that I think what you're saying is bullshit. I lean towards your position. That if that's like this extreme version, I would say no. But with these small hints that,
And fair enough. We might have some confirmation bias going on about that.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going.
The term is sex dysphoria, not gender dysphoria. The reason is this: gender is fluid. Gender is an ideology. It's not a fact. It's not a real fact. You can have
Because you can perform gender, like Judith Butler says, like you can
you can do whatever you want, and you can. Not only that, it keeps changing. The fact that it keeps changing, like a person's Facebook has something like 140 genders, and people openly say, "We want to change the gender. I used to be this, and now I'm that." Well, that's insane.
Okay, let's go to the neutral.
Can we
Let's
pause
reset.
on that? I think for that guy as well, just in terms of exploring his beliefs, there's actually something quite interesting there, because it would be fun to explore whether or not the trans person would even necessarily disagree with what he's saying, that maybe gender is more sort of like social, right, and does change, and maybe sex is immutable. The trans person might not think that they've actually changed their sex, but rather that they've changed their gender, and then it might turn out that they actually agree on more than they think, just based off of what he said there.
Yep. Yeah, now we're resetting the claim to something else.
Everyone's gender identity should be affirmed. Don't move. Everyone's gender identity should be affirmed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Okay, tell him way down there why you slightly agree.
I slightly agree because it's not just self-identification, it's also how we live together in society. So if we had not had this conversation and I walked down the street there, I dare say most people, maybe not every single person, but I dare say most people would make a few quick assumptions about me without knowing who I am. So because of dress, presentation, effects of medical transition, etc., without knowing me, will probably make a snap judgment that that's probably a woman. They're probably not going to think to themselves, well, that's a woman, not sure that woman's trans or cisgender, but that looks like a woman, and I'm just going to carry on with life because, you know, I'm busy going to the bakery or what have you.
Okay, so why are you not? So everyone's gender identity should be affirmed. You're not on the agree or strongly agree. So that must mean that you believe that not everybody's gender identity should be affirmed. Whose gender identity should not be affirmed?
That must mean
That was why not ask? The person is right there. Why not just ask them? They're like, why are you not further along the line? That would have been a perfectly.
Yep.
Why load that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Peter seems to be in the, front of the classroom professor mode, which I don't think is ideal. He should be asking more questions and clarifications for sure.
Someone put a comment in the chat saying, why only normative claims? And I don't know if you have some insight into that, Reid, like having been there more.
That is the more contentious issues related to social issues in society. They're claims on what we should be doing as a society and not so much on what actually is. But there are things to talk about what is as well. So descriptive claims, but
well, in that case, I'm with this question. If we wanted to ask a normative claim, that's fair to do. We started off with everyone, and I'm wondering if there's maybe more of a neutral. That's maybe a neutral way to ask that question. Like, people's gender identity should be affirmed instead of everyone, because that means it's an all or nothing kind of question. I'm just trying to think that through.
No, that's very interesting actually, because you might think you can phrase the question strongly and then going with like slightly agree is like, well, I agree with a more moderate form of that question. But I wonder how, if you do a more moderate form of the question, like how that then would change the way that people would say, like what different responses you get from the same people basically for like a stronger or weaker version of the same claim basically.
Yeah. I assume if it was some people's gender identity should be affirmed, the trans person would be on strongly agree, but it was everyone, so they're all slightly. Yeah. So it is. And that
what about the strongly disagree
claim.
guy? That would be interesting, right? To see what he would.
Yeah, see if he changed. If it was some, that would be interesting. Yeah.
I've taken this position because I believe the affirmation of gender identity should be cautious. There should be a cautious approach. Now, what I mean by that is, if, say, I never medically transitioned and I look like you or him or any other man here right now, and then all of a sudden one day I woke up and just decided I expect that the whole world will affirm my gender and I'm just not going to put any effort into it, then that's not particularly convincing.
Okay.
Just to, make a point about the format again. I've never seen anyone have this conversation this civilly about this topic and with that amount of nuance. I don't know what happened. What did we do to get this on that day in Sydney? It just I don't know what happened, but it's very interesting to me that we got this.
We're just very lucky with your interlocutors. Could have been luck.
Yeah, very lucky. Yeah.
I think that is a big factor here. I think she's especially in the more, I guess, vulnerable position, I guess you might say, socially in this dialogue, or might feel more victimized by people's perspectives, but is clearly very articulate and aware of her views and able to represent them very well. And I think that's helping. I think his views are less clear, but they seem to be civil. I wonder if it's also they seem to be aware that they were also previously sharing a position in the pro-life rally you were describing earlier. So maybe they're sort of seeing themselves as allies with nuance still. They're still in some ways seeing the benefits of the in-group, even though they're now sort of essentially out-group members. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's also, people are on different teams regarding this issue, and people who may be on like the guy on that gentleman's team wouldn't take the time to listen to a one-on-one conversation with a trans woman. But since it's this format where there's someone who's represented on their position, they're willing to be almost cheering for him to make good points, but they're actually hearing this nuanced position that they've never heard before from an actual person who disagrees. Yeah, maybe that's part of the advantage.
I will. Yeah, I think that is something I would concede is has value here, that it forces people to potentially engage with a section of the community they might otherwise just skip on YouTube or not engage with at all. Or that is an interesting component of this.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
Everyone's gender identity should be affirmed. Tell them why you strongly disagree.
Because, continue on what I said before, if you understand that the person is detached from physical reality and that therefore they're insane. You need to help them. We have mental health facilities to help these people. People who are mentally ill kill themselves. It's not that we cause their suicide. It's their mental illness that causes suicide.
Well, there's some claims there.
And you get blunt, extremely blunt people like this who are just regular people, and they're not, worried about being fired from their institution because they're not an expert. It's just a normal person giving their opinion.
Yeah.
And this is what a lot of people think. So you're getting that represented, and you're getting a response to it. So, yeah.
Pete, do you see Peter's role to challenge any of these claims that are being made, or is he just facilitating at this point?
He's trying to get more clarity on what people's positions are. I think he will start to question more hopefully soon. We'll see.
Okay.
All of the mentally ill, not just the ones with sex dysphoria.
So
the point about strongly disagreeing is if you affirm their insane proposition, you're making them feel reinforced in their insanity. What we should do is hold our sanity and say, listen, you need help.
Okay, let's say
psychotherapy or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I'm not a psychotherapist.
So I'm gonna give you something that you haven't asked for.
Okay.
There are 100 people. 99 of those 100 people can be quote unquote helped. In other words, to identify their gender with their to identify. Okay.
We don't want gender because it's fluid and it's a concept and
so
it's not real.
They say So 99 out of 100 people, they say, we thought this, we now realize this is not the case. But what about that one person? What about that 1 in 100 case in which somebody says, you know what, I've been very sincere, I've gone through medical and psychological help, I've tried to do this, and I still, even though I was born with a penis, I feel deeply, deeply, I've gone through thousands of hours of counseling. I've seen psychiatrists, psychologists. What are those things where you sit in groups?
Points.
Yeah. And they're just like, no, I want to transition.
Well, who cares what they think?
But that was a pro-trans side hypothetical question, technically.
It took a while to get there, though. It was a long road.
I think the guy lost interest in the question. Like, I think his mind drifted onto something else. But yeah, it was like pushback.
It was good. It was a good thought experiment. Just not. I definitely have never. Yeah.
Pete could drill down to his epistemology now at this point. I don't think I've seen this, but
what was that last statement? They sucks to be them, was that, or like
who cares about what they
who cares that's a difficult difficult position to SE. You should care about this person.
Those things where you sit in groups. And they're just like, no, I want to transition.
Well, who cares what they think?
Wow.
Well, because it would improve the quality of their life.
How can it improve the quality of life? They're insane and they're hanging on to their insanity.
But you correct me if I'm wrong.
Why are we just walking away? Why?
Wait a second. Don't walk away. Okay. Goodness.
I don't mind. I would want to hear response, but it is now more of a moderated debate. But it's moderated. I don't know. Debate, conversation.
Hey, look. Okay, one thing that I can say for sure, right? I don't think this is SE, right? But maybe that doesn't mean this doesn't have value. That this isn't actually improving, discourse, or it could be. These are totally possible things. Maybe this format has value. I really don't think this is SE.
Well, I'm confused. Is this supposed to be SE?
Well, this is not getting to epistemology evaluating it yet. We're now on a different claim.
Okay.
And we're trying to get reasons from both sides again.
Okay.
So, but it's still, we could get into SE territory technically if we started questioning the quality of these reasons. But we're now getting different reasons from different people.
Okay.
There's so many different positions that you could spend the whole day seeing. I mean, there's lots of positions where we've got an embarrassment of riches when it comes to really interesting, let's say, claims about things. But
a good SEer can focus on the claim, remember the claim, focus on the claim, and just get it off the other riffraff out of the picture and really delve into the reasons for the quality of the reasons for the specific claim discussed. And you can mention the claim 30 times over and over. You have to remind everybody what the claim is. and really hone into the epistemology. It can be done.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, first you need to get a picture of the general argument, which is what we're trying to do here. We're getting a reason, and then we're getting a response, a rebuttal to the reason potentially. We can then go meta and talk about these as reasons for this claim, but it's difficult.
If the epistemologies come in, I'm here for it. I mean, maybe I criticized too soon, so I haven't seen the video. So
something I'm thinking, like just looking at this setup and stuff, is I do think it invites people in, and it's maybe good for like getting people to give an initial take on something, right? But then it's almost like you want a separate space apart from the spectrum to individually one-on-one go deep with each person. Like I'm thinking with both of the people that Pete's talked to so far, that would have been interesting to just see like a prolonged one-on-one now about their justification for their position and sort of looking for consistency within that. And I think that that's very difficult. But then I don't know how you manage that exactly, because maybe the people who feel a bit awkward or bored or whatever just stood on the spectrum while you take the other person to the side for ages or something. But it seems like
yeah, no, that's a really good idea. I think you could basically have two different people there. I mean, the thing is, you would want to do this in synchronized.
A couple of SEs.
Yeah, and then you could film those interactions as well individually, and then sort of change, show how their positions were defined initially through spectrum, and then through SE afterwards, those positions were explored. And maybe maybe the negative here would just be the potential time commitment you're expecting from people walking around. But like as a concept, I think that would be really interesting. It's kind of, this is the thing. It's like I'm sort of almost emotionally triggered here, because I'm feeling like what I really want to do is like ask these people even more questions and find out what they think about these things that they're saying.
Yeah, here's a different setup we had at UCLA, where we had the spectrum, but then we also had this little table where it's one-on-one. So there could be, it's a little more of a setup, but that would be ideal. You take one person, or actually you split them. You have multiple SEers, and you get the initial take. I don't know. There's things to experiment with.
That image is ripe for some really uncharitable photoshopping. I just want to point that out.
All right. We have a SE creator meeting in 50 minutes. Let's get through it.
Said that transitioning has improved the quality of your life.
That's my perception, yes.
Really? So you could be wrong about that perception?
I think perception in general is debatable. I'm not here to impose my perception on others.
No, just you. But could you be wrong about the fact that it's improved the quality of your life?
I think Peter just had some aporia.
At my end, my perception is there's no evidence that that's the case.
I'm
not aware. I'm not saying I will never regret this, and then by the time I'm 90 years old, I'll have the same opinion. Anything can happen in the future, but I'm fairly certain that it's improved the quality of my life. And I've been fairly certain of that for the last decade.
Oh, so this has been a thing of 10 years?
Yes.
So, okay, so if we had,
just to pause
let's just say,
on that question, sorry. I think that question is also a bit of a confusing question. That could you be wrong about your perception that it's improved your life? Just because there's a few ways, at least I could think of interpreting that. One would be like, could you be wrong, like you actually had a different perception and you like perceived it wrongly? And the other one is sort of more like, if you had different values, then would you think it improved your life, right? And they're both, I mean, I think the answer's sort of obvious to either one, but I think that it's just that ambiguity of that question that makes it a sort of weird one to answer for the person.
Yeah, asking about the certainty of a subjective state, how certain you can be about a subjective opinion or feeling you have about yourself. And I think the response seems fairly I could change, but I could be the same. And that seems like a fair response.
Yeah, I'd want to frame it as like a two worlds thing. Your net well-being could be positive as a trans woman, but could it, in a different world where you made different choices, could your well-being be even better potentially? It's hard to say.
I think though, one thing we might want to have done there is like commend that reflection, because it sounds like she's reasonably proportioning her confidence in her position with the available evidence. She's not overstating her position. I think that was commendable as an answer, and I think it would have been useful to call that out, perhaps, because that, as in the framing of SE, not in the framing of supporting the conclusion, but supporting the method of the confidence position. I think that would have been good to call out.
Because many times in these conversations, we would hear somebody saying, "This is how it is. This is how I feel. I could never see it the other way. This is This is the future and the past.
Up on your previous point.
Anything you want.
See, the point is this: there's lots of people who change their gender, and they have their genitals mutilated, and they have body parts manufactured and all that, right? But then it changes, and then they regret it, and they can't reverse those.
Yeah, detransitioners they're called.
I mean, we're doing terrible things to kids. Kids can't, if a Muslim woman does a clitoridectomy on a 10-year-old daughter, that's a criminal offense. But the judges here are ordering genital mutilation. It's a satanic country. We're changing the laws. We're going towards Satanism. And it's starting from the judiciary. They're making laws to make insanity normal.
What I think would be useful here then is to maybe try to get down to his falsification criteria, because he's made this claim reasons for the claim many times that this is a disorder, it's insanity, it's a mental illness. And what would be a falsification for that? Like if the American Psychiatric Association came out and said, hey, just not saying this is the case, but maybe if they came out and said this is not a mental disorder, which they actually have, but would you reduce your confidence level in this belief? And my guess is that he wouldn't. He would still have this belief at the same level, regardless of if this is a psychiatric disorder or not a psychiatric disorder. So we'd probably need to go to a different reason, because I'm thinking this might not be the reason.
I'm thinking apparently it's a satanic cult that seems to be taking this. This has took a turn. If Peter doesn't push back on this, I don't even know what I'm watching anymore. Like this is okay. I'm ready for it.
To affirm somebody else's beliefs.
I want to say as well that the guy's also making some empirical claims, and I think it would be nice to just call him out. Sounds kind of like combative, but to raise them for him, so as it's like, well, are you actually, is this like a soundbite that you've got in your head of like, well, detransitioners? Or if I ask you the question, imagine you found out that 90% of kids who start transitioning actually don't regret it, and that their suicidality rate decreases versus like a control group or something. Would that change your mind? And just to sort of sanity check that these empirical claims people make are actually like responsive to stuff they might find out, and not just like random intuitions that they've developed that kind of sound about right. Because I think that is something that can happen a lot with people. You can kind of pick up on empirical sounding claims, and they just sound right to you.
That was that small remark that he made. How can it improve their lives? It's a mental illness. So how could it ever improve their lives? That remark, like, well, how would you be able to determine if it were to improve their lives, right? That would have been a great point to try and put under the microscope with him. Yeah.
See, that's the thing that we've just not gotten there, and I think if at this point he doesn't start to push back, I really do mean it. I'm not sure what the purpose of this is, because we're through the looking glass here on like we've got all of these kinds of interesting claims. I want to know what he's going to say here. What happens next?
If you look at them and they're a man and they've got a penis, and they tell you they're a woman, or they tell you that they're a labradoodle or something like that, why should you believe it?
To laugh.
I didn't mean to laugh.
That was a funny thing to say.
I don't have a problem with it. They can believe that they're a labradoodle, a female one, or a bisexual labradoodle. But why should I have to accept that? I mean.
Yeah, so you have two problems. I want to make sure I understand it correctly. You have two problems. The first problem is that you think does the person an injustice.
Yes.
And the second problem is you think it's unfair to you to acknowledge somebody else's sex because you don't want to
impose that on me. It's like you can have your belief system that you're a bisexual labradoodle. I don't have a problem with that. When you tell me that I have to treat you like a bisexual labradoodle, then I have a problem.
Okay.
When you legislate that, I have a problem. See, this goes down to empathy, which is complete bullshit, right? Because, you know, we used to have adult people working with adult people. I've been in computers for 40 years, okay? We don't even talk to people who act immature because we know they're childish and they're going to keep changing. So what you do is you keep your personality, your feelings to yourself. Even if you say something that is offensive to the other person, you know, you want to give them a quote for $30,000 and they're saying, no, that's stupid. Well, it might be offensive to me because I've struggled hard to make $30,000. But I don't show that. What we are being asked to do now is to be aware of and to change our behavior for the feelings of other people. But hang on, there's a problem with that. I didn't cause it. If I'm going to change the feelings of other people, it means that I have more power in their life than they do.
Okay, I'm coming to you for a comment on that, but don't we do that in other aspects of our lives all the time?
No, only intimate relationships.
No,
like children and family.
No,
and
but I
wife.
mean, like we say, please, thank you.
Yeah.
Negatively phrased question. Don't we? No, come on. That's basic SE. Do we would be the proper way to say it. Sorry, I'm being picky.
No, I think it's
Of all the flags to throw on the field at this point in this conversation, I mean, why not? I mean, this is just, I don't know what this is. This is just normally I would say this is what happens when you don't pin down a claim. Like, this is normally how an interlocutor or a conversation partner will sound at the beginning of a conversation, because you've not really defined what the claim is and then started to explore the epistemology. This chap is just freewheeling his feelings about the matter. And also, by the way, I like the comment. Yeah, what does he think the word empathy means? I'm curious. Genuinely worth checking that one.
I think an interesting question to throw at him would be: could you give an example of where we take someone's feelings seriously or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lean into letting people talk. I lean into hearing people out, and this is over my limit.
Well, that's
open
just
the door.
civilization. That's just civilized behavior and manners.
What do you have to say? I mean, he said there's a lot going on there.
So I think I got two important points out of that. The first point is doing justice. I don't necessarily agree that I don't believe I'm doing injustice to myself. Obviously, I'm unable to have a natural family because I've medically transitioned, and I can't have a go off, get married, have kids. So all of that biologically cannot occur because of medical choices I've made. However, on the second point, the point of he shouldn't be forced to affirm, well, I don't think anyone should be forced to affirm anything. I do recognize in the West, there's this expectation by many in the LGBTQ community that however they identify individually, that they will be affirmed. On that point, I disagree with them, and so on this point, I agree with him that he shouldn't be forced. So it appears to me that 1 out of 2 points, we do agree on something.
Which is nice. It's good. It's good. She's a great advocate for her position, and she's making cogent statements, and there's definitely more to ask her about why she thinks these things, and that would be great to get into that. Again, we're not doing SE.
No, I do want to know her epistemology.
She's my favorite
Yeah.
person in this entire thing.
Yeah, she's great.
I'd like to. Yeah, I'd like to know. She's just measured, and I'd just like to know. Yeah, where she's coming from.
It's still worth exploring her epistemology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, why she believes those things, and absolutely is there to have that conversation. But this is just a moderated debate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that about how Pete sort of came back on that, rather than I think he should have probably stuck on one specific claim and asked her a question about that, rather than what do you have to say? There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there. What a statement. How do you deal with that?
yeah, the Satanism and the...
Did you hear that? That was crazy.
So one of the things that you said, which was interesting to me, so you made the decision to not have children, so you wanted to transition. So that was more important to your life than the possibility of having children?
What? Sorry, what is this? Like, because what is the purpose of that question? Like, we're not exploring the claim anymore. He's just interviewing her. He's trying to understand her better, which is fine. It's a valid thing to do, I guess. But like, it seems like, again, I'm not sure where does that question come from? How is this exploring the nature and the relationship of the confidence and truth of the claims? He's just interviewing her, which is fine.
Flat out nails down her motivation and how important this is to her. I think that's a very human question. Exploring her validity and a commitment to this notion. I think
it is a very human question.
And I think it does get down to her epistemology because it shows the extremity of her commitment to her thought.
Okay.
Plus, I think it's also an interesting question with regards to what the guy said about how could they feel better? Like, how it's a mental illness. How could their quality of life improve if they transitioned? Like, no, this was so important to me. It's not like I'd never wanted children, but this was more important than being able to have children. This could possibly make him think about that.
That's good. Yes, that would be very good.
Time in my life when I was younger, the gender dysphoria was too much, and thinking about, being married, having children, I was in the headspace of that.
So, okay. So, is there anything that you would like to say to this man?
What?
This man, doesn't he even ask for their names in the beginning?
You made me feel bad, Janosch, because I thought actually that was a really smart reason to ask that question, and then he could have gone over, but how I don't know. I don't even know. I'm at a loss for what the purpose of this is.
Tell him if there's anything.
Sure.
Make you feel bad, then my work here is done for today.
Good work, buddy.
Life is very complicated. I assume there's nothing new there. It can be complicated in ways, we think life is complicated, but it can be complicated in ways that we cannot expect. So how he's taking it will be different to how someone else will take it.
Is there a way one should take it?
I don't think there's a right or wrong there. I think we just need to start to have conversations. And I've come across conservative Christians, conservative Catholics who
You're Catholic.
Well, yes, and all of a sudden, for the first time in their life, they've seen a real trans person in their life, and shock horror, I don't look like a drag queen. But then they'll have these perceptions fed by the media or whoever you want to point the finger at. They have these perceptions, and then when they meet someone like me in reality, they don't start, compromising on principles or their beliefs or what have you. But I do notice they take a step back and take it in, because it can be a lot to take in.
Because life is complicated, like you said.
Correct.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say?
Well, just that.
To them.
I mean, I'm very happy that some trans people accept that they can't impose their belief system on other people, right? But the problem is that it starts with homosexuality. It doesn't start with transgenderism.
What do you mean?
Well, there's basically, we'll start with your example, right? If you're a boy and you've got a penis,
correct,
and first of all, you don't have the sexual maturity to make any decisions or to have any feelings.
When you're very young, for sure, yeah.
That's what they're pushing, all right? So that's perversion. And that's grooming the child for pedophilia later in life, okay? When they get to the point where their hormones start kicking in,
yes,
and they've already passed the age of reason, right?
Like 18.
No, age of reason, 7 years
Why
old.
is
9 years
Peter
old,
affirming this narrative? I mean, firstly, you don't, in this conversational context, you don't need to be judging the statements. You just don't need to, and it's really better that you don't. if you're affirming, if you say yes or I agree or correct them or add, to a certain extent, you're no longer acting as somebody that's helping them think this through, but you're just validating them. That's what he's doing. And I don't is Peter listening to what he's saying? Because he seems to be validating some pretty wild claims here.
Right, and he's agreeing with something that he doesn't even that they don't even see eye to eye. Like he said, "Oh yeah, age of reason, sure, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, 18. No, not 18, 7." Like you have to ask, age of reason, what is that? How do you define that? Because that's exactly what it's about. You want to stop talking past each other. You want to understand the other person's position, and that is all the more important when you agree on something. Like, of course, everyone who does SE has an opinion on some of the claims, and sometimes strong opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But still, when you disagree, you're much more likely to ask, "What do you mean by that?" Or to challenge something. When you strongly agree with something, you have to do the same thing. That's what it's all about, right?
I want people that hold beliefs that I agree with to hold them for good reasons. Like,
yes,
and I want them to improve those reasons if I can. Like, but this is just affirmation.
And you might discover better reasons to hold the belief that you already hold that they give to you because you didn't even know about them. You can learn yourself, not just them.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking like American law, but okay, go ahead.
No, I'm talking about the ability, religious culpability, where you are then able to sin. You can't sin if you're 5 years old and you don't understand sin.
Right.
But if you understand that it's wrong to piss in your friend's lunchbox and you do it, right?
I love your examples.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, when you're 5 years old, it's not a crime. When you're
Right.
7 years old, it's a crime.
Yeah.
All right?
Right.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah.
He's agreeing.
But the point is that they know what their penis is for.
So you know how he's mentioned a few times now sort of like quasi-religious or religious theological justifications as well for his views. And I've definitely found it interesting almost that has gone completely unchallenged. Now I think it would be inconsistent to say that should be challenged over and above like any other claims, because then that would be saying, well, Pete should sort of impose his own views in it. But I think that those things are doing a lot of work, and I'm certainly seeing a little bit of almost, well, I agree with you politically, so I don't know if it's ignoring those or if it's just I'll be okay with those because sort of like the end point you get to is the same or what it is. But those like the thing about like the 7 being the age of reason and like that's when you don't sin, and you know the idea of it being satanic and stuff. I think it would be great to see those things.
Yeah, Nathan, I think you're right. I think if we drill down to this, it's probably going to be a religious epistemology, and and it'd be really would have been fascinating if we talked to his interlocutor or the other individual that Pete is talking to, that she might have a religious epistemology as well for what she believes, and that would have been really fascinating to go there to see the kind of like two people who have shared these two religious, possibly the same religious faith, but they're having these epistemologies with two vastly different conclusions.
Right. That was
then
right.
you have some really interesting. You have a really interesting conversation because you have two faiths giving two vastly different beliefs. And what does that say about the quality of the reason? So
yes.
that whole conversation was right there. That was amazing. I hadn't even thought of that. That's pretty. One thing I will say is there is this thing called that you might describe as almost a rapport agreement, where you're just sort of agreeing, not because you're affirming the statement, but because you're just trying to nudge things on. Early on in the conversation, I can get why you might do that. This feels like not the time to be doing that, and it still he's saying right and yes, where I actually think what he's saying I understand or okay, understood, but he's not using that language. He's saying right and yes, and that's really bad at this point in the conversation. And still at no point has Peter, I think, really challenged the epistemology. Like there's been like what 2 questions I think that he's asked him.
I don't want to feel like we're piling on Pete, because I don't want to seem like that, because that's not the point. I think it's just confusing to me. I think, when I have these sorts of conversations, I want to kind of, I'm in the back of my mind, and maybe this is the motivation for having these conversations. I see these different silos that we're all living in, and we just can't cross that bridge to talk to one another. And these kinds of talks, I think, when done to a certain level, can have the possibility to do that. And they're really powerful conversations when they do that. And I think when I see a conversation that may not only not do that, but have the possibility of having a backfire effect where we have at the very end, this person's more rigid in their belief and that person's more rigid in their belief. I'm like, well, what happened? Like, is that something what's the point of the conversation? And that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I imagine the point is that the audience, I mean, I think that's the intention here, is to get the audience to believe something, to change the audience's position. Like, I don't imagine anybody's walking out of this experience with a different view than the one they held. It doesn't seem like the gentleman has used the opportunity to speak to somebody from a group that he normally would not pay attention to and learn something. It doesn't seem like, it's hard to know. It's absolutely hard to know. So maybe he will reflect differently because he's had this interaction with this person.
Our blonde, I'm ignoring the blonde lady, but our redheaded lady seems like she has understood a lot more of the other person's position and walked away with some enlightenment as to the black fellow's position.
I don't know. I don't think she. My guess would be she hasn't really learned anything she didn't already know. She sounds like she's had plenty of interactions, and this is one of the things about being trans is I said this many times. You have to be very pragmatic. you recognize the challenges. You are very aware of the challenges of these things. So yeah, it's. I don't know. My impression is that she probably. I don't know. I would hope both of them learn something, but I think my fear is that neither of them are walking away with much in the way of having had value out of this conversation.
Right. Well, there's going to be a few more points about this guy's beliefs and his religious beliefs and the religious epistemology. And that's what I wanted to add is he's talked about religion a couple of times now, and I think it would be like you said earlier, it would show a bias if you just focused on religious claims. But I think in this case, it's not about religious claims; it's about religious epistemology, and you wanna look at the epistemology and investigate that, and therefore you need to, if that claim is based on religious epistemology, you have to look at that rather than the claim itself.
Yep, we'll get into that.
Right.
They know what the girls are like.
Right.
And they start getting attracted to girls. And if they don't get attracted to girls and they're attracted to boys, there's a problem.
What's the problem?
Well, you can't ever get married and have children. It's
What if
very
they don't?
simple.
What if they don't want that? They're just born like that.
Who cares what they want at 7 years old? They're going to change, remember?
Okay. Well, so what if they
They're
feel
gonna
like
change
that
all
at
the
like
time.
21?
Right. If they feel like that in the 21, they have every right to feel like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Or anything over 18.
Okay.
But the point is, it's not permanent. Because someday, just like the lady over there, I'm sorry, whichever way you want to. Yeah. Whatever, they change. So at 21, they might say, they're
So that's
homosexual.
interesting for a second. So you said I'm sorry. So you wanted to be respectful and
Yes,
polite.
because I'm talking to her like a normal human being.
Yeah.
She's a human being,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm not being,
No, you're not being.
purposely offensive.
No. You're being.
Right.
No, you're being honest.
Right. But if I don't know someone, I just categorize them the way they do, So the point is
So
that
you're
the person,
extending courtesies to the people, like
Well,
basic
she's-
courtesy.
Absolutely. Why
Yeah.
not?
Well, no, I agree. Yeah.
I'm a civilized person.
Well, yeah, me too.
I think here,
So
just to pause,
we need to.
it's like it would be really good for Pete to jog the guy's memory on that point to say,
Or ask her,
in a
ask her that did she feel that it was a civil conversation?
Well, there's that,
Because
but the
she
guy
was
the
a
guy
woman.
said earlier, who cares about respecting people's feelings, right? And I think that
Right.
that's what Pete's trying to get at by going down that avenue. But then he's not it's almost like he's waiting for the other guy to recollect what he said and detect an inconsistency. And I think that if you're not used to pruning your beliefs for consistency, then you're probably not going to catch yourself like that. And so that's where someone who's facilitating a conversation like this is useful, because then you can, highlight those things. And that's what you're trying to train people to do, is catch themselves in those types of inconsistencies, so you can over time begin to, head towards truth overall, hopefully.
Yeah.
I would say that he is being patently offensive and directly confrontational to the other lady, and doing so by including her in gross generalizations that are directly socially negative, claiming that all of them are insane and a whole bunch of other things, and that he can't see that is the direct message to the audience. So good on you, Peter, for exposing him, even though you exposed him to agree with you. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Go ahead.
We need to identify.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention one quick thing real quick. I think Janosch mentioned the chat, but something I was going to mention is, like, is there a reason why they were not sharing names? Because usually in SE we ask, what's your name? Okay, hi, my name's so and so. Like that doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's a holdover from the university tour, where we didn't want to get names because we don't know how old people are. But we could start doing that. That would be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
That they need help. It's sex dysphoria. It's not gender dysphoria, because gender keeps changing.
Okay.
And the homosexual that we just mentioned,
I think he's wrong
at
on that
21,
point,
he might be.
Like, I think that I don't know if it's in the latest DSM still. I think there was a controversy about taking it out, but it is called gender dysphoria, right? The thing that has. So he's actually just wrong about that point, and that might be something.
I think he's advocating a change in the terminology from gender to sex dysphoria. Yeah,
okay.
That's what
He's saying science is wrong. The immutable, unchangeable.
Saying,
the DSM is wrong.
which is even more questionable, right? If it's like, well, yeah, science is practiced by the scientific authorities is wrong, but my version of it is the right.
except when I decide it's wrong. Yeah,
I will agree the DSM is wrong.
No,
It's just nomenclature. Yeah.
we won't go down that road hole.
Homosexual at 30, when he decides he wants to get married and have children, he might change his mind.
More so for women than men, but okay, I'll run with what you're saying.
Statistically, right? I mean, there's a lot of propaganda pushing homosexuality like it's a possibility. It's not. This is liberalism, right?
So direct messaging, direct messaging, calling out direct messaging at this point seems absolutely pointless, because it's just. It's not even being a neutral moderator of the debate. I mean, I don't even know how to describe this. Direct messaging would normally be a bad thing. So normally we should call it out.
We want to be done in about
a little
20.
bit.
Yeah.
Minutes,
Yeah, I have to leave a little early. Yeah.
Does not fit into an anus. You don't put anyone deciding that they want to put.
I think we have a lot of people who might disagree with that, but a lot of heterosexual people who disagree with that.
It doesn't matter if they agree or not. I would be seriously offended by trying to put my reproductive equipment where somebody else collects their human waste, their toxic human waste. It's insane.
Toxic.
It's not funny. I mean, women
It kind of is funny, but okay.
Women can get pleasure in other ways. They don't necessarily have to have anal sex, because it's not sex. It's perversion. The only sex that can happen is between a penis and a vagina.
What if a woman or a guy wants that?
Well, if they want that, it's obviously perverse, right?
Doesn't mean it's bad because it's a kink.
It's not kink. It's perverse, and it's going to kill them.
How's it going to kill them?
Well, you get all sorts of. It's the lifestyle that goes with it.
Yeah, but people have anal sex constantly, and people aren't dropping dead from anal sex.
Wait until they get to 55 and they can't control their bowels.
Oh no, I'm 56.
It's called incontinence. All right, they take on lots of.
I just can't control my balls.
This took a turn.
Lovers. I heard a homosexual. I have friends who are homosexual.
Yeah.
And he was boasting that he was up at the lavatory in King's Cross somewhere, and that after 15 men he stopped counting. Now he doesn't know exactly. Yeah. Now, do you think he's going to get AIDS or some horrible venereal disease?
I hope he wore protection.
No, he didn't. Yeah. He was on drugs.
Well, that's
the point I'm
another
making
problem.
But there's a lifestyle that goes with it. You don't just go and do one-off anal intercourse.
What about trans? Is there a trans
You
lifestyle?
You just can't
Well,
stop.
I think it's homosexuality that has now blossomed into trans, that is now getting more and more complex. Life isn't complex.
Life is not complex.
Correct. If you want to make life complex, then you're insane. Science gives you all what you need to know. Religion gives you the rest.
Okay.
It's straightforward.
I think I might know why this has
people
gotten
who-
so many
people who-
views, and I don't think it's because of the lines on the ground.
So Peter's, this guy said, science gives you all that you want to know. Religion gives you the rest, meaning the things
not-
that you don't
not
want to know.
And if you think it's complicated, then you're insane. There's a new insanity category out or whatever. You know, is it his DSM or whatever? He's complication.
It's not complicated. If you're trying to make it complicated, you're insane.
That's definition of gish galloping if you are playing at home.
Oh yeah.
Throwing claims.
No,
claims.
people who have knowledge, they're not constantly contradicting themselves in their head. The problem with insane people is they're actually contradicting themselves in their head. So they're in pain. They're in intellectual pain. And that's why they need validation from outside. They're terribly insecure. We need to make them secure by giving them treatment.
Just going to turn around and
I'm
say,
going to
what
give
do
you the
think
last
to that?
word,
Oh, thank
and
God.
we're going to move on. You have anything to say or
Do you have
anything
anything to
we
say
want people to
to
know
all
or
of
what have you?
Dare I
Okay.
say this is probably the best discussion that has taken place in Australia, or one of the best that's taken place in Australia, because we've seen some pretty ugly scenes of protests and what have you, especially in Sydney and other places in the recent month or so, since the start of World Pride. We've had a series of public discourse around LGBTQ issues. There hasn't been a great reflection on us in general, but no one's thrown a punch, and no one's yelled at each other, and we're about to end on a very good note.
Yeah, what made this discussion so good?
The easy answer would be, oh, well, we're Catholics. Of course it's going to go well. But no, I think the real answer is, I think deep down in all of us, it's a human thing for us to just be courteous, be thoughtful, and be compassionate.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was excellent.
She was awesome.
I think she moves the unmoved middle way more than he does for anybody who respects epistemology and reasoning.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
would
that
agree
as
with
well, he seemed to be the one that was kind of escalating things, right, by calling her like satanic, or I missed the point where he called her a fence post, did he?
Yeah.
And various
Well,
other things about like
he
being
claimed-
insane,
He claimed the defense post gender identity, I think.
like being insane and stuff, right? But I think then it would have been on her to escalate by being offended, maybe like rightly so, by some of those things, right? But whereas because she was so sort of dispassionately just interested in reasons, whether or not she'd like done this before, like I don't think she had. So maybe maybe there were like a few inconsistencies, whatever in there, but it would have been on her to escalate, and she didn't. So I think it's really on her that the conversation went well.
Very much agree.
It's interesting because if you happen to have an anti-trans agenda and you wanted people to agree with you, I think having a full-on SE conversation where everything comes out and the epistemologies come out and we can evaluate the reasons, seemed like that would be a better way to do it, if that's what was your goal. Am I making sense there? If you really want to, I'm trying to explain myself well. If you happen to not agree with trans movement, and if that was your agenda, the way to show that would be, I guess you could have a legitimate street epistemology conversation, and you could let everything come out, and everything, have the chips fall where they may, and watch different epistemologies, and have people gain insight into their beliefs. And I would think over time that the better epistemologies would show themselves.
Huh. Yeah, I think I think that video is ironically, well, I think it's a good video. I think, I'm sorry, that's very uncharitable. I think the video is effective. I think that I can understand why this has gotten a lot of views. I can understand why people like this video. But I think the reasons why it's effective are because of the lady. I think she was a huge advocate, and I think everybody's on the same page here. She was a great advocate for her views and her positions. She was very empathetic. She sought common interest, but she didn't. Nothing seemed irrational. She was very clear and cogent, even about things about her own self-reported confidence in her position, which I thought was remarkable. And unfortunately, the gentleman was, let's just say, a larger than life character with some very strange positions, and was basically the characters and the personalities were the message, were the effect of this video. And I have to say, I think Peter weathered the storm of what the gentleman was saying quite well, and towards the end asked a few funny questions and interesting questions, but mostly I don't think the SE spectrum mechanism added to any of it, really. I think if that had been just an interview between those two people, it probably would have been just as effective. And I don't mean that to be uncharitable to Peter. And I think maybe there is some real value in actually Peter going out and just having interviews where people off the street are being, interviewed. I think there's potentially some value in that, and this is perhaps what this spectrum SE mechanism is doing. And actually, this is a good example of it, and I think it has, as I say, has value. I just don't think it's street epistemology in the same way that I've understood what SE is. I really don't think that would be the case. Yeah, that would be my thought.
I think it theoretically could be. We only discussed their reasons at, getting their claim, and then we switched the claims. We got their reasons, even just a few things, and then we kind of waffled around and wander off on various topics. It can be more focused, and then we can focus on the quality of reasons, which we have done, and we'll, stay tuned. There's more videos coming where we do reset the claims to, this is a good reason to believe this. That is the claim that they discuss. So there's definitely room for improvement. I do think,
as for all of us, not just for the person we saw, for everybody, we have room for improvement. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, still, I feel like this is the goal is not. It doesn't feel like the goal is necessarily to do SE. The goal is to have the conversation, to make it interesting, mainly for the audience. It's the goal is to get an interesting back and forth between the participants, and if there is an opportunity to use SE, Peter will probably use that. But I feel like, yeah, I wouldn't want to call it spectrum street epistemology. I would want to call it something else that sometimes entails using street epistemology and sometimes not.
I think with a lot of movements, there tends to be a trend towards, if you're an activist for something and there's a movement, I think there's a tendency towards wanting to, quote unquote, raise awareness. And at some point, the desire to raise awareness overrides the desire for the change that that awareness is designed to achieve and bring about.
Well,
I
think that's what I'm saying, Will, is that that if you are an activist for a certain position, like in this case, possibly, that to really make, if that was your goal, then I think by having a straight up and down SE conversation, a clear cut SE conversation, would actually actually help your activism as opposed to hurt it. Because if you're having an unbiased conversation and you can really understand epistemologies well, then it's assuming what the activist position you're taking is, more aligned with objective reality, then that would be shown over time, as opposed to someone looking just like that they're just trying to confirm something they already believe.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But I mean, I think the take that I was thinking of here is that like these videos, I think, are going to attract attention and are going to get be interesting for people to watch. And I think that raising of awareness of the dichotomy of people's perspectives on different issues diversity of people's perspectives on different issues. I think it's entertaining, it's fun to watch, and it makes people think about things. I'm just not sure that it's doing that job of demonstrating the virtues and the principles of SE that I think are the antidote to the presence of these diverse opinions. I think that's the hard part. If there was more SE in this stuff, then I think I would, or more demonstrations of the principles of SE in these videos, then I think I could understand it. It's just I find it not just hard to have seen. I don't think I've seen it yet, but I find it hard to know where it would be in these things. I find it hard to know how you would add those things in, given the format. So yeah, I guess that's why I'm still skeptical about spectrum.
I think it can be for some people who would be interested in learning through epistemology, who want to have these conversations, who want to be more curious, inspire more curiosity in others, who dislike this confrontational way of having conversations. They can be put off by these kinds of interactions. And I think it would be a shame if people who were interested in street epistemology were put off by these examples and thought, look at that, that's not as honest as I thought it would be. I thought there was something to be learned, something to be gained by learning and spreading street epistemology. But looking at that, I don't believe that anymore. And if that happened, then I think it would be good to call it something else, not Spectrum SE. Like we had some suggestions in the comments, like Spectrum Street Discussion,
Street Debate.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
I think there's definitely a couple of different sort of like dialectical contexts, right? The one that SE individuals in the SE organization seem to find themselves under is more this sort of wanting to be neutral facilitators of discussions. And I think that sort of Peter's use of some of these techniques is maybe secondary to some of his like political concerns around free speech or CRT, wokeism, things like that. That's how I view it, as sort of someone who's outside of the SE organization. And then I think it's good for SE to get an elevation of the sort of name and practices, right? Because it's definitely going to drive more interest towards you. But I also think that it could potentially pigeonhole SE as being viewed as I think that this is similarly something that you see with theists, right? Where theists are very cautious about approaching or engaging with SE because they see it as like a tool of atheism. I think you'll see a similar thing happen politically, where people view it almost as like this thing that's being used by the alt-right or something, rather than like just a tool that can actually improve political discourse, which I think it actually could be.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, you can have a quote unquote woke claim, and you can use SE to investigate someone who does not have a woke claim, and vice versa. You can have a not woke claim and interview someone who does. And the SE is a dialectic. It's a conversational technique. It's claim independent. It doesn't matter what your claim is, because anybody can use it to drill down to the epistemology. How do you know what you know? And is that a reliable reason to know that thing? And that's what SE helps, hopefully, to drill down to. And then the confidence. And is your confidence aligned with the strength of knowing that thing? And so anybody can use it. And it's a dialectic technique to have people who have different beliefs where we can kind of get together and discuss. And if we're open enough, just maybe learn a thing or two and gain some insight to maybe what is more true, or align ourselves with maybe more objectively true in the world.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap it up here, but just as a teaser, here's one potential innovation that might that I'm trying to go for in the future is talking about the quality of the reasoning in the actual reset of the claims themselves.
You like this?
Yeah.
What are you
I
thinking?
love this. I love this.
Okay. Okay. Anybody can do this. It's free. Like you can do this if you work with kids or whatever. And it's astonishing to me that people don't do this all the time. It's flabbergasting to me. Okay. So I'm going to reset. The question is,
Is this a good reason to be?
yeah, as a reason, women as a class have been historically oppressed. As a reason, is that a good reason to believe that abortion should be legal in the third trimester? So, because women have been oppressed as a class, is that a good reason to believe that abortion in the third trimester should be legal?
Guys, I'm going to fall off this conversation because of another talk coming up. As some of us
was a good
do.
teaser, though.
But it was
Yep. I will
very
see
good.
you
was
in
a
the
good
creators
teaser.
meeting. So there you go. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll hopefully be doing more of these. And yeah, we'll see you around. Feel free to shout out your channel. Dali, are you back with audio? Yeah, great. No, you're not back. Yeah, Dali would just wanted to say, I'm grateful for Reid and Peter for bringing me the red-haired lady's perspective. There you go. Yes, and again, I'm Reid from Cordial Curiosity. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter. Janosch, where can people find you?
I can't. Germany.
If you're German speaking, join us on the Discord server at Sokratischer Weg. Look up our website. Yeah.
All right. Dali can't say anything, but you can find him juggling lessons on YouTube. And Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah, my channel is Digital Gnosis on YouTube, so you can find me there.
All right.
Yep. And I'm Inspire Reflection and Deviant Robot, depending on the mood.
Yep,
on
and
most of the things.
And that was Mark Solomon from Being Reasonable. So yeah, thanks everyone, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.